I'm Margo. Contact.
And you want to be.
That I'll do.
What's your name?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, they were, we got stuck, they were at 2 count flies.
That's usually a problem.
Yeah,
Especially. I mean, it is. Usually coming in from here.
Is this okay?
Yes. And Mark, would you help bring in some chairs? Chairs.
Probably even down.
Well, yeah.
They sure are. They told me you guys were coming. Chairs.
Welcome back.
I'm honest. I haven't seen you in forever.
Like they were like, I don't think it's, you know, I feel sorry. I think I'll be confused. I mean, even if we're.
Okay, Judy, let's go.
Hello, everybody. Back up a little bit. Is this about the right volume or is it too loud? It's okay? It's pretty loud.
No, that's good.
No, it's good. It's loud, it's good. I'm Judy Maddox. I'm chair of our Western North Carolina Sierra Club, and it's wonderful to see all you guys. And I'm seeing all these beautiful faces of people that I know and love. So great to have you. Tonight's program, as you know, is Climate Change and Hope with our wonderful Roger Helm. And as people trickle in, we may push some more chairs around, so be patient with us. So you know this, we're partners with Ollie, with the Reuters Center. How many of you are Ollie members right now? Oh, look at this, wow. Well, they're wonderful. They provide student texts. This program is being recorded and all of our previous programs for the last 3 years are on recording. So if you want to look back at our previous bear program or our previous hiking in the Western Mountains, I mean, there's just a whole range of things to look for. But I need to tell you about UNCA. UNCA has a shortfall of $6 million. Maybe you've heard that. The police department and the traffic department are just kind of a small subsection of that. And they are looking to recruit money. And the way they're looking to recruit it is to charge $5 every time you guys come. If you're not Ollie, if you don't already have a whole year parking sticker. So if you're just popping in for one of our meetings, they're looking for you to pay $5 for you to park that night. Now, we're in negotiation with them. We're trying to offer them a bribe. I'm just kidding. To say, hey, we'll pay you up front and please don't come up here. But it's gonna supposedly start next meeting. It's gonna start August 19th, and our next meeting is the first Wednesday of September. So what we'll have, and we'll be back into the big room downstairs, we'll have a couple of computers at the desk. And what you do is you just pull out your credit card and swipe it and pay the $5. And it meshes with your license plate. And when they come around, the parking people, they have a scanner and they say, oh, okay, you've paid. So I'm just saying, they're doing that to everybody, not just us, in any programs, anywhere, day or night or weekends. So don't be surprised and don't run away. Keep coming back. And it may be that we'll negotiate and sweet talk them into whatever. So stay tuned. But Ollie is super, super wonderful. We are Sierra Club and we're 3 different tiers. There's the national, and a lady just asked me tonight, hey, I'm a national Sierra Club member. I get the magazine, I get whatever. I get them asking me for money, surprise, surprise. But there's a chapter, which is the state of North Carolina, and they are working out of Raleigh. And the big thing that they're working about that I'm very impressed with is on wood chips. Europe has this strange, not understanding rule that you can burn up wood chips and it will be climate friendly. As a matter of fact, Ken and I were just in the Alps. As a matter of fact, we just got back this afternoon, so I'm a little jet lagged here. But they in this small town, their entire set of energy is just burning logs and trees and chips. I mean, they've got a big dead tree program, but they don't realize that their deal with the Southeast United States, we're just clear cutting. We're not cutting dead wood, we're cutting everything. So they're working really hard, and we would like the governor to put a ban on that or so. So stay tuned, we'll talk more about that. But of course, the most important is Western North Carolina, Sierra Club, us. So if you're not receiving our newsletters every other Saturday, make sure that you've signed up with this wonderful lady in the corner. Caitlin, if you'll raise your hand. You signed up when you came downstairs. Normally we're at the meeting room down there. And she's gonna put you on to where you will get the newsletters every other week. And what that tells you is our wonderful programs and who to vote for and how to do different things. So make sure that you are signed up. I want to stop and acknowledge our wonderful friends and ancestors. The land that we are on is Cherokee land, and we are very respectful that they have gardened it for so many years. Okay, our programs are the first Wednesday of every month. And to let you know, next first Wednesday, the program will be on, get this, labor unions and the environment. That's kind of a stretch for us. And did you know that the lithium mine over by Charlotte is being reopened. There are two of them. One of them is the largest in the entire world. Does that just take your breath away? And the idea is that we somehow have got to get away from fossil fuel and support electric vehicles, but we have to do it safely. And we also have to take care of labor forces. Anyway, the person who's coming to talk is a United States steelworker. Isn't that interesting? So come next month. Should be very interesting. The following program, guess what? October will be on the election. So let's talk a little bit about the election. When you signed in downstairs, there were sheets, and Ken is going to pass them around now, asking for your help for the election will actually be about 3 weeks long. You know, early voting starts October 17th and runs for about 2.5 weeks. And then, of course, election day is the first Tuesday in November. So what we are doing, and Ken is our political chair, and they've spent a lot of months interviewing from the governor all the way down to the Buncombe County Commission, City Council, and now Soil and Water. I bet you've never even heard of Soil and Water, right? Well, they're really important. And so our card, when you come to vote, I bet you know who you're going to vote for president, right? And maybe governor, right? But I bet you don't know who you're going to vote for Soil and Water. We're going to hand out cards to say, these are our endorsements. We've spent a lot of time interviewing all the candidates and doing background. These are our recommendations. And now that we're kind of known, people are looking for our cards because they say, hey, I don't have time to do all this research. Well, guess what? We need 300 people, and I'm looking at you, 300 people to sign up. And if you will sign up to say, hey, I'll take one shift of 3 hours and I'll hand it out for 3 hours. And I'm seeing people who have certainly done that, and we really appreciate that. So please consider that, and we will send out requests upcoming. All right, we have a Kids Adventure Club, and we are doing 3 events this August, and we will do a bunch in the fall and have done a bunch last spring with Asheville Middle School. A lot of these kids are inner city and have really never been out to the country. We take them to pet snakes and to stomp around in the creeks and to look for stoneflies. Let me ask everybody to check your cell phone right now and please turn it off. That'd be great. So if you're interested in helping us, we need an adult. We'd love to have one adult for every kid. So if you're interested, please see me or text me or email me. So the election, I've already told you, October 17th to October 30th. There will be 10 early voting sites that we will try to have all these hundreds of people. And of course, Election Day, November 5th. So please sign up if you're willing, and please recruit your neighbors and any clubs, anybody. We need your help. Okay, right down this hall, you can recycle Amazon bags. I mean, you guys get things from Amazon in those bags and you don't know what to do with them? Well, it's not only Amazon, it's Ingalls, it's bread bags, it's any plastic bag. Right down the hall, you can just dump them off before you go out that side door, and they make, Trex is the company, they make decking and railings. Is that cool? So bring your bags.
Does that include the padded mailers, the bubble wrap?
Yes, I think it does. The bubble. I think so. If you look, there's a poster right down there that has a picture of everything. So the picnic was a great success. We had 60 people and it was just fun. And guess what? We're gonna do a holiday party. And I told you it's always the first Wednesday. Well, we couldn't get the first Wednesday, but December will be the second Wednesday at the Unitarian Church. So you'll need to bring a potluck and big smiles and holiday. It seems funny to talk about that in August, doesn't it? Okay, I already told you about September 4th. And what else do I need to tell you? Yes.
I just mentioned quickly the cleanup.
Oh, please do. Richard, come on up. And Ken Brame, if you'll come up and tell us as well about the election. Okay, this is Richard Kark, our river cleanup, amazing man.
You do it from where you're standing, Richard. Let's do it right there.
But you got to put the mic up.
I was gonna put this up.
Oh, please do.
It's got visuals. So I can use that. See how to get a hold of it. We're having another river cleanup. The date has been set for September 28th, which is a Saturday. So you hear about this next month if you come to the meeting too, but river cleanups are fun. The canoes are provided by Greenworks and they provide the paddles and the PFDs. So you just sort of have to bring only yourself and a water bottle and some river shoes and be ready to paddle down the river and go to the shore and pick up junk along the river. It's always very fun and fulfilling and rewarding, and we usually find lots of stuff. And so consider the river cleanup on September 28th, a Saturday. Usually starts about 10 o'clock, about 3 hours on the river. You can bring a kayak too if you want to just ferry junk over to the nearest canoe, because the canoes have a lot of room for junk in them. Kayaks don't, but you can do that if you want. So that's, and you'll hear about it again and you'll read about it. But the river cleanup, September 28th, 10 o'clock till about 1 o'clock, and consider it. And I'll pass around a sign up, and you're not signing your life away. Just I would let you know updates on what's going to happen. So consider signing up for the cleanup. And if you have any questions afterwards, ask me, and Zoom people, you can email me there.
Thank you. And Ken,
Yeah, in addition to volunteering, the other thing we do, we've interviewed all the statewide candidates for elections. And, that's everything from Secretary of State to agriculture or auditor and everybody, all those things that you probably haven't had time to do a lot of research on. And then locally, we interview and we make endorsements for county commission, city council, and she mentioned agriculture supervisor and local races. And then we have those on the cards, as you pointed out. But we also want to make sure that our candidates win. And unfortunately today, in order to win, you got to have money. So we have a PAC, North Carolina Sierra Club Political Action Committee, and we have given so far $2,500 to all of our statewide candidates. And there's only 15 competitive state house and state senate seats in North Carolina. Everything else is so gerrymandered, they're not. But that will make the difference on whether or not we can sustain vetoes of our next governor and things like that, or whether things could get passed like happened this time around. So we're gonna have a PAC fundraising event on the 25th of September and from 5:30 to 7, and it'll be upstairs at the Grove Arcade. So put that on your calendars. We'd love to have you be there. We'll have most of our local endorsed elected officials and endorsed candidates there. So a chance to actually talk to them one-on-one and things like that. So put that on your calendar. Thank you.
So is that list, we have that list now?
We haven't. Question was, do we have that list of our endorsed candidates right now? We're finalizing it. It should be on our website within the next 4 weeks probably. And then we'll print our cards and they'll be available before early voting starts. And so we'll have those. But we'll also include that in one of our newsletters. So you'll have that as well.
That's September 25th.
September 25th, 5:30 to 7.
And it's on a Wednesday, and I would love for our hosts to raise their hands. It's wonderful Buck and Nancy Bragg in the back corner, and they're on the top level of the Grove Arcade. And thank you, always. They've done it for years now. So, so how many of you feel like you could take a shift for election and hand out cards? Can I see a show of hands? Oh, you are wonderful.
What?
Well, actually, I'd love for you to take 10 shifts. Yeah, so whatever you can do. All right, introducing our wonderful man of the hour, Roger Helms. How many of you had Ollie classes with this man? I have had many, many with him. He actually for 25 years worked at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and his focus was seeing the harmful effects of oil spills on birds and creatures, and actually wrote a book and now teaches classes and now tries to save the world. So Mr. Roger.
Thank you, Judy.
Turn some lights.
Please, thank you, Morris. Yeah, I don't know if this one does it. There we go. Yay. Okay, there's a lot of stuff on my slides to read, not a lot of stuff necessarily. If people can read it, people are colorblind, they may have issues. So if people are having trouble reading stuff, please let me know and I will read it. Otherwise, I'll let, for the most part, the slides speak for themselves. There are several cartoons, so I hope you find some amusement, but if you can't really see what's going on, let me know, and I'll tell you about that. So as Judy said, my name is Dr. Roger Helm, and I've been working on climate change for about 15 years now. When I retired from the Fish and Wildlife Service and we came down here to Asheville, I realized that no one here at Ollie was teaching on climate change. And I thought, wow, this is a group of people that are intelligent, have money and have time, and they really should be engaged in this issue. So I've been teaching here at Ollie on climate change for quite a while. I also have gone and taught at community colleges, and I've done it many times at different community centers. I have my business cards up here. I'm willing to talk to lots of people about this very, very important issue. But tonight isn't going to be Climate Change 101. It's not going to really go into great detail on climate change. I'm going to touch a few things, but Judy specifically asked me to talk about climate change and hope. So tonight I'm going to focus a lot more on the hope side of stuff. If you want a lot more of the doom and gloom, take one of my classes because there's a lot to share there. But we'll get a few things on it. I think that last line really is quite correct, you know, about the size of a walnut. So hope. So what we're going to talk about today. There's a singular take-home message, and you're going to be bludgeoned with this because you've already heard it. So for the next until November 7th, you're going to be bludgeoned with this particular thing because that's what's going to happen. But we'll talk about climate, and a little bit we're going to talk about it. And I just want people to understand that when people talk about climate change, it's manifests in the weather we have, but climate change is a different thing. And that's what scientists are looking at and saying, you look at climate change and then you have weather. And so we'll talk about that because climate change is very sensitive. Hope, what is it? Where can it be found in climate change? And what does that look like when you find it? Well, at the bottom, it's far too late and things are far too bad for pessimism. So brilliant cartoonists can be fascinating futurists, in my opinion. This is one of my favorite cartoonists, Bill Watterson, who did Calvin and Hobbes. And I'll let you read through it.
Someone can't read it. Could you read
I
it?
could read it. Okay, so Calvin's talking to Hobbes, Calvin's the little boy. And Calvin says, what do you think is the secret to happiness? Is it money, power, or fame? And he says, I choose money. If you have enough money, you can buy power and fame. That way, you have it all, and you'll be really happy. Hobbes is looking a little bit confused here, and Calvin continues on. Happiness is being famous for your financial ability to indulge in every kind of excess. Hobbes says, well, I suppose that's one way to define it. And then Calvin says, the part I think I'd like the best is crushing people who are in my way. Does this bring to mind anybody?
Just a little mini Trump.
So this is the whole point of the conversation, ultimately, when it comes to climate change, when it comes to many things. And as I'll come back to a little bit on it, if the 45th president is reelected, there isn't any hope when it comes to climate, because the US is too important in that process. And he's already clear what he will do with that. So, weather and climate. Weather. It varies a whole bunch every single day, 5, 10, 15, 20 degrees every single day. Over a year, it varies 30, 40, 50 or more degrees. This is centigrade. So Fahrenheit, it's 100 degrees. It can vary well over 100 degrees. So weather varies tremendously. When it comes to climate, over millennia, I mean like thousands of years, it varies from 0 to 5 degrees centigrade. Climate is defined as a 30-year period of weather. So if you take we're not quite in the end of a single climate data point. We're 2024. But if you start at the beginning of this year, beginning of this century, and you go to date, we'll call that a climate. It's very close. And you look at all the weather in that time period, the storms, the temperature, the rainfall, locally and nationally. And you get one data point on climate. And so scientists look back on single data points of climate way back in history, and they do that based a lot on ice cores. Digging down a mile in Antarctica and several thousand meters in Greenland, they can give a very accurate picture of what the climate was like, how much CO2 was in the air, and what the temperature was, and so they can really get good correlation. So they really understand historically what's gone on when they talk about climate. And so with climate, it varies just 5 degrees over thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, millions of years. When we're 4 degrees colder, we're in an ice age. 4 degrees warmer, the world's very different. The Arctic is ice-free. Greenland has a forest. Antarctica had a forest when we were 4 degrees warmer. So climate is super sensitive to stuff. So when we talk about the global temperature of the Earth, it's gone up 1.2 degrees centigrade in the last few decades, really. That's very significant. So another way to look at this, here's the Earth's temperature since the last ice age. And typically what the scientists will do, like myself, you take an average temperature. So we took the average temperature from 1961 to 1990. You could go back to the beginning of the 1900s. It really doesn't vary much. It's about 57 degrees, 57.2, 57.3 degrees, 57.4. And that's your zero line. And you say, okay, now we're going to compare what was happening in the world with the temperature using this as our baseline. And you'll see why we did this. So about 22,000 years ago, the middle of the last ice age we had, we were about 4.3 degrees centigrade colder. Boston was under a mile of ice at that time. So now we're going to move forward through time. So now we've taken a screen away, and now we're up to about 8,000 years ago. In that time period, temperature has increased. A couple times it jumps quite a bit, but those jumps take 1,000 years. To jump 1 degree centigrade takes 1,000 years. Normally it's pretty flat, and then it'll jump occasionally. But it takes 1,000 years to jump 1 degree, and in the last couple the last couple decades, we've jumped 1 degree. So you see civilization begins, and see it's coming here, it's gone up, and now it's back to this 0 line. So since we've been here on the earth, civilization, basically, we've been, way back here, Cro-Magnon man and things of that nature, early Homo sapiens. But in terms of when civilization began, 11,000 years ago is approximately. The temperature has been very, very moderate, very similar through this time. Hasn't varied more than 0.5 degree all this time that we've been around. So now we look at where we are today. We're up here. In this last little bit of time, we've jumped over 1 degree. If we choose not to do anything, this is where it's going. By 2100, this is where it's going to be. If we choose to engage, these are the possibilities. UN's trying to keep it below 2, and that's not going to happen anymore. They were trying 1.5. That's not going to happen. 2 is about the best we can hope for, and then down from there. So you can see when I talk a lot about climate, it's a very depressing subject. But we're talking about hope today. But you have to have the understanding of why this is such a critically important issue, because it's going to change the world so dramatically. You've already experienced in your lifetimes, all of our lifetimes. We're watching these changes happen now because temperature and CO2 are tightly related. And as temperature goes up, things are very different. The storms are very different. Heat waves are very different. Fires are very different. This is really, really important that we get this thing under control. That's what we're looking for. So hope is an orientation of the mind and spirit to work on something you value, no matter the likely outcome. This is the two points of this whole thing: voting and taking action. Hope is found in taking action. I hope you take action on climate change. I have 3 people here today, hopefully to give you some areas that you can engage in on that specific issue. You're here in the Sierra Club, so I imagine you're already taking action. So I don't want to denigrate in any way or put down or belittle the work that you're doing. I'm just here as an evangelist for one that I really think is important and that we can't miss, because not only we're seeing the effect at this point in I'm 70 years old. I'm seeing this effect now. I have 2 daughters. They're going to see it big time. And grandchildren, hard to even know because of the amount of effect that's going to be happening that quickly. So this is one that's important to me, is taking action. So where can it be found in climate change? Well, climate change is not unique. There's a lot of challenges out there. It can be found in faith. Can be found legally. These are some of the things we'll talk about. Be found in what the government's doing. Found in technology, and it's found in humor. I need humor some days after teaching this stuff.
What's Sue the best?
Sue, it's cutting off the word of BASTARD.
Oh, okay.
S. But there's so many wickedly difficult things out there. You can, I'll take, play Jeopardy. And I'll take column A, I'll take artificial intelligence and income inequality. And from column B, I'll do fascists, fanatics, and followers, and the fact that we don't have much critical thinking or ethics in education anymore. There's a ton of things that are really important here. Many of them are related to climate change, and climate change is an overlay on these things. So ecological collapse, job loss, COVID, quite actually, expanding of wars. One of the biggest things that's going to happen that we're going to experience is movement of people, because where they're living doesn't work anymore. They're not getting enough rain, or they're getting too much rain, or it's too hot, or it's too cold. It's not always just going to be heat for everybody. So that's going to move people around. The military recognized this about 40 years ago, and they've been working on climate change, even though they couldn't say it depending on who was at the White House at the time. They've been working on this issue because they know that that movement of people is going to destabilize things. And that's why we have a lot of people coming up from Central America and South America, because that's one of the least livable places in the world due to their narrowness, the storms coming through, the heat, and the rainfall. So they can't do crops because they can't have consistency through time in the weather, so they can't raise the crops, and might as well go somewhere else. So that's going to be destabilizing a lot of things. But you go back and say, okay, climate change, just go to the end of the line and you can worry about something else up here and you don't have to worry about climate change. So that's one way to deal with it. Faith. A higher power is in control and all will be well, or at least as it's supposed to be. I thought this was a great quote for this from this Archbishop, excuse me. Apocalypse. It's a result of mistakes involving technology divorced from spirituality. I'm not sure I'm not quite as faithful as some people. But I would say that, and we'll talk about technology, but divorcing it from real outcomes, divorcing it from unintended consequences is a real important thing. And there's a lot of people that take the position that, well, technology is the reason we're in this place. Is it really the best thing to look for to get us out of this place? An argument to be made. But faith. One of the big things about faith, though, is so many faiths have this end of times concept. Each generation sort of thinks the world's the worst it could be right today. That's another way to look at this in terms of hope. People are constantly saying, this is the worst of times. Well, in fact, it really isn't. It's in many, many ways, it's some of the best of times. But people often go to salvation, retribution. And this is a real problem in this particular election, because many US evangelicals welcome Armageddon, which is prophesied to follow environmental destruction and Middle East wars, because they will rise to meet the Lord in the clouds. And a lot of people believe this in their heart. I'm not going to argue one way or the other, but it's very important to them. But in terms of the consequences to the rest of us, we're kind of left behind. And unfortunately, according to some people like Bill Moyers, very, very rich people believe this to their core, and they are influencing elections. They're influencing what's going on in the world right now. So these are very difficult things for me to grasp my brain around when it comes to hope and faith. That you just kind of leave it to someone else. But for many people, that's a good answer. And so it has to be out there as an answer for people, because that provides them hope that their God, their spiritual leader, this is either what's supposed to happen or they'll never let this happen. And maybe that's true. Maybe that's the answer. I certainly don't know. But for a lot of people, that's their answer. Hope can be found in lawsuits against big oil. they've been trying for a long time, and it's been very difficult to sue big oil over this thing. But from those failures, they've learned a lot of stuff. They've learned they have to be very specific. So Puerto Rico is suing specifically over Hurricane Maria and the fact that the oil companies told them that there was not going to be any problem. But specifically, Maria caused Puerto Rico a lot of problems. So they're suing over that. I thought it was interesting that some of them are using the RICO, the racketeering charge, which basically all the oil companies collaborating, since that was what the Georgia folks are using in one of the lawsuits against number 45. This was one of the, I guess they fell asleep at the wheel, the Supreme Court, because they allowed lawsuits on this subject to move forward at the state level. And the state level, the bar, the legal bar is much, much lower to hold companies accountable. And so the Supreme Court has now allowed this to happen. And so a lot of states now are engaging in work against the oil companies with the intention of getting money to put back into mitigation. So hope is found in mitigating, adapting to these things that are coming down the pipe. So that's a real good thing if we get more money. It's happening internationally too, with some success so far. The Dutch Supreme Court said that Royal Dutch was liable, and they're just trying to determine damages now, how much they owe. Significant progress. Hope in the government. I started with this a little bit at the very beginning when I talked about this election. One of the things that's fundamentally true worldwide is that whatever the US does, the rest of the world watches very carefully, one, and two, often following suit. So if the US is a leader in this direction, a lot of countries head that direction. Why is that? Because we spend a lot of money. So what the US does has great influence to what the world does. If the US is disengaged on this issue, the world walks away from it to a great extent. Not entirely, but there's just not to be money to be made. And so it's US leadership on this is hugely important.
What's GCC?
Global climate change. Thank you for the question. Another thing that's critically important, because this is global climate change. This isn't what's happening outside of here in Asheville. This isn't what's happening in North Carolina. This isn't what's happening in the United States. This is global climate change. This is what's happening in the world. The US could go to zero emissions. We could be sucking carbon out of the atmosphere. If China continues doing what they're doing, if India continues on their path, if Russia continues on their path, et cetera, then what we do really has very little impact because it's a global issue now. This CO2 gets up there, goes around the earth, makes a nice, lovely blanket, and it creates lots of problems. So this is absolutely, unequivocally something that requires international engagement. And the US is the only country that has shown the typical leadership. We've had a few hiccups along the way, without a doubt, but we're the only country that stood up leadership-wise that has enough power of the big countries. So what the US does is hugely important. So what our government does is hugely important. Legislation that's happened, the Inflation Reduction Act, $783 billion on energy and climate. This is only about $780 billion more than had been invested previously. This is a huge deal here. That's a long process. Again, if we have a significant change in administration, then this thing goes away. this investment, these incentives go away. So this is a huge amount of money. We hear the word million, billion, trillion. And for me, I'm a biologist. I'm not a real great numbers guy. You know, I like critters and turning over rocks and finding things. But it helped me get my brain around million, trillion, million, billion, trillion. When I was told, okay, if you were to count $1 per second, how long would it take to count to $1 million? $1, $2, $3, 24/7, 365. It would take you 11.62 days, counting 24/7, to count to $1 million. 11.62 days. How about to $1 billion? Well, billion's bigger than $1 million, right? It's bigger. It would take you 31.6 years. These numbers really aren't equivalent. 11.62 days versus 31.6 years. And so when we're talking $783 billion, we're talking a lot of money. How about if you count to $1 trillion, because our annual budget and what we're in the hole and that sort of stuff, it's only 1.2 trillion or 1.3 trillion, 2.7, just a decimal point. So it's really hardly any different. It would take you 31,600 years to count to $1 trillion. That's counting 24/7, 365. I mean, these numbers are not in relationship to each other. So when you see $1 billion, hey, that's really an investment. And this is part of the reason why what will happen in 2020 in terms of the mix of gas in the blue, nuclear in the yellow, hydro, and coal in the black, and renewables in the green. And what's going to happen through time with this investment working through time. So by 2030, renewables go from 12 to 42%. Coal goes from 19 down to 3. And if you go up to 2035, renewables are at 57%. So again, this is a longer term process, has great import if we can sustain it. When it comes to technology, hope is found in technology, in part because we know what needs to be done. A book came out in 2017, and they ranked all kinds of things. They had 100 different things in their book that they looked at. And it's what it would cost, how much it would reduce carbon dioxide, and what we would ultimately save by doing this work. So refrigerant management is a big deal. So all that Freon, if we manage it properly, it's a big, big deal, because there's a lot of Freon in refrigerators. And then when they die, if it all goes to the landfill and they just get punctured and it goes up into the atmosphere, big problem. So we know that's really important. Wind turbines, reducing food waste, having a plant-rich diet, educating girls, family planning, have huge impacts. So we know a lot of things. And these aren't all technological wizardry things, but they have huge potential impact. Here's all sort of technological wizardry things. So it's a little kind of hard to figure out. So this is how much the thing cost in euros per 1,000 tons of carbon dioxide. So just basically, if you're down here, it didn't cost much. And this is how much you get out of it. So this is how much you've abated, how much CO2 you're stopping from going in. So people say, oh yeah, let's do LEDs. Well, LEDs didn't cost anything, essentially, but they also don't produce much of anything. Here's rice management was kind of interesting. Here's full hybrid cars. So you get a little bit out of it, doesn't cost much. You don't really start getting stuff until you really deal with soil regeneration, geothermal, grassland management. There's a lot of land stuff, and you start to get some real CO2 reduction. The big ones up here are CCS, stands for carbon capture and storage. So it's the idea of sucking carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. and storing it away so it's not back up in the atmosphere. One of the things that people talk a lot about is, well, we'll plant more trees. You know, trees suck out carbon dioxide. Absolutely. Fantastic. Very positive thing. It's just the time frame of how much they suck out, and it's not permanent, as wildfires have shown us only too clearly, because the things burn, and now the CO2 is back up there. So it's a positive at one level, but not great. But carbon capture and storage is really good. I mean, but it's very expensive to get stuff out. You know, the geoengineering wasn't part of what these people were looking at, and they were looking at a lot of the major things because of the concerns about geoengineering, which we'll come to.
What is that red block say?
That red block says, note, geoengineering not considered a viable option. So in a lot of the people that look at options for climate change, geoengineering, we'll talk about what that is. I'm just noting that there are a lot of scientists, for a lot of reasons, don't think that's a real positive, but it's something out there. So these are the kinds of things we're refining now. They're pretty well established. They're doing pretty well. Wind, solar, geothermal, EVs, you know, batteries, buildings. The US, that's one of the big things in the US is our buildings. A lot of our carbon footprint is buildings, but retrofitting buildings and doing new buildings is really making a huge difference. So US is making a big push on this, and it's very, very positive.
What's EV?
Electric vehicles.
Thank you.
Appreciate you asking the questions because other people probably have it. They're just afraid to ask. So this is what I just talked about, carbon capture and storage. There's hydrogen fuel cells, GMOs making food. A lot of people are very afraid of GMOs, but it has a lot potential of making food more nutritious and more accessible, but it has issues. Fission, we're so far away from that, I doubt that's even fusion. Yeah, my bad, thank you. Fusion. The geoengineering, which is the unintended consequences, which I will come back to. So wind. Globally, wind could meet worldwide energy, electricity use 40 times over. This is onshore and offshore. And look what's happening to the costs.
In the what?
The costs, how much it costs. So in 1983, to do a kilowatt hour of wind, it cost 35 cents. Now it's down here. This is the offshore. Here's onshore. Way down. They're now competitive with oil. And they're renewable. Solar. Same things in terms of its costs. This is the cost starting in 2010. And it's in large part because there wasn't much being done, and China really jumped on this, and they're the ones making the best solar panels. China's way ahead of the US on this. And this is actually a Chinese solar site. This is the largest molten salt one in the world. But it's very cheap. It's scalable, so people can put a solar panel on their roof. As you see solar panels all, you know, like a traffic signal or a traffic light or things like that. So you can have it around the world now. And so that's really a good thing. You don't need the big technology, but there's massive investments in it by India and China in particular, and it's surpassing oil and gas worldwide. So now solar has more energy being put out there than oil and gas. Rich?
Roger, earlier you said the US is kind of leading the world, and if we do something, others will follow, but this is the opposite. And I've read that China each year installs about 90% of the additional solar capacity of the whole world. The whole rest of the world only putting in 10%. And on top of that, make great solar panels, and they're cheap, but we put import tariffs on them so that they can't come into our country at a reasonable cost. So how is it that we are leading the world?
So the question, and it's a very valid question, earlier I said, what the US does leads the world, and what, if the US is engaged, then the world follows, and if US is disengaged, the world doesn't follow. And it's pointed out that China, in fact, is way ahead of the US. They're producing a lot more solar panels. They're getting a lot more energy out of solar panels. Their solar panels are much better than the US solar panels. And this is, so what's the big deal? It's a valid point. One of the biggest markets for solar panels is the US for China. So that drives part of it. China is using this in part because, not about global climate change particularly, but because it's cheaper than coal. And so China and the US, as we, I think, are all aware, are really in quite a battle right now. As to, 10, 20, 30 years from now, who's going to be on top of this game? Is it going to be a democracy, or is it going to be a totalitarian government? And so they're kind of an exceptional point. And the point about tariffs is absolutely true. China is making some absolutely amazing EVs that are very cheap, very good range, basically fairly safe. And we're putting import tariffs on them to protect American jobs. So when we talk about this, and this leads back to the comment about international engagement on this. We can't ignore what's going on here. This is a global, so if climate change is such a big deal, we should be using a lot more what than China's doing. But we have jobs and people, so it's a bigger problem.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think China is also by far the world leader in installing coal.
So the question was, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't China one of the leaders in coal plants? And that's exactly correct. New coal plants. They're bringing 300 coal plants online.
Ooh.
Coal it's a big problem. So again, that's back to the negotiations. That's back to, so how do we deal with this? How do we influence the Chinese efforts? I mean, they've got a lot of people. So here, this little US of 380, 400 million people versus 1.2 billion people. Remember, that million and billion is a big difference. They got a lot of people. So their politics drives their country of what they're doing. And it's a very big, challenging thing. And this is why isolationism is a death knell for us, death knell for the world. Nuclear, it's likely to continue to supply about 10% of the world's energy sources. In the US, it's 17, 18% somewhat at different times. But worldwide, it's about 10%. And it probably won't change. Nuclear has some real advantages in many ways, but it also has some real problems with the waste and disposal and safety issues, because smart people can make it into bombs. Carbon capture and storage, US, taking a big gamble on carbon sucking vacuums. To remain less than 2 degrees centigrade, 95% of the models that look at global climate change rely on carbon capture and storage to remove carbon. So if we're going to stay below 2 degrees centigrade, we have to have this technology. It's been worked on for about 20 years, but so far it's still in its infancy. Problem is scale. Presently, approximately 20 tons of carbon dioxide per year are stored. America's trying to get up to 400 million to 1.8 billion tons by 2050. That's 25 years hence. Kind of need it sooner. And worldwide, we got to get to 8 billion tons a year. This is a lot more than is happening right now. A lot more than the technology seems to be available. But we went to the moon. We said, this is important. We got to do this. This is critically important. Let's get on this. As long as it's sort of, well, let's see if we can make some money doing this. This might be an interesting thing. We'll use the same technique. They're basically using the technology that the Germans used in their U-boats. That's the basic technology they're doing. I mean, it just hasn't advanced well at all. So we need to invest in this thing. We need to get going here. That'll bring some hope. Geoengineering. A lot of things are just basically you engineer something and it's it's earth based. So you do something to the earth to try to change something. In this case, you try to reduce the amount of solar energy coming in. You paint roofs white. That helps. We should be painting a lot more roofs white. That's a good thing. Giant white sheets over Antarctica, because the Arctic Ocean, the Arctic, it used to reflect back a ton of that solar energy coming in. Right now it's melting. And now you've got water, and water absorbs the energy. It doesn't reflect it back. So this is technically I think it'd be a real difficult thing to do. But something to think about. There's lots of other things out there. They've been doing cloud seeding for a long time to try to cause rain. It's the same concept, using reflective particles, spraying reflective particles up in the atmosphere. I don't know if people can read the red. So it's reflective particles, sulfur dioxide they spray up there. And this comes from the realization that when there's volcanoes, would put up a whole bunch of sulfur dioxide, it reflects a lot of energy back into the space. And so let's put a whole bunch of reflective particles up there and reflect this energy coming in back. The problem is it's a very regional effect. And so that means that, say India does it over India, and Pakistan is now no longer getting, it changes the weather patterns. And now Pakistan is getting a lot more rain, and they both have nuclear weapons. So there's some problems of how narrow the thing is, and long-term maintenance. So this is something you spray it up there, but it comes down. Remember acid rain? That was a big deal. That's sulfur dioxide. This is something that EPA stopped being put up in the atmosphere because it comes down as acid rain and melts things. So there's a lot of unintended consequences. A lot of people trying this, but where it's going to go is interesting. So humor. No, it's face down there, you see.
Go back.
So it's showing polar bears water skiing. Well, it looks like they're adapting to Arctic warming better than we thought.
Roger, along those lines, Sarasota, Florida had 16 inches of rain 2 days ago. I saw a video somebody put online of somebody going down the street in water skis behind a truck.
I believe it. Was it my brother? So this is where hope is found. It's taking action. This is something that the tobacco industry and the oil industry and a lot of other industries that are anti-action, particularly anti-government action. The worst thing you can have is that for the government to take action on your industry. So they've understood for a long time that there's a psychology for people to take action. And it works both sides. So to take action, a person has to think that the issue is real. there's a tangible opportunity or a tangible risk. Think about what you've been hearing about climate change for a long time. To this day, it's not real, it's a hoax. If you kind of believe that, do you take action? Probably not so much. You have to believe that the thing is going to happen very soon. You know, my house might be on fire, 10 years from now, but so what? My house might be on fire 10 seconds from now. That's important. So you have to believe it's immediate. What you've heard about climate change, when's this going to happen? 2100. It's way out there. You don't have to worry about it. You have to believe it's close. It's going to affect you or something you care about. Your dog, your wife, your husband, your house. We've been told, well, maybe some people on, some of the tropical islands might get flooded, but too bad for them. Not close. And you have to believe that it's doable. You have to believe that if you take the action, it makes a difference. So think about yourself. If you're going to do something, does this make sense to you? That you have to believe what you're doing has some relevance. It's going to impact the thing you care about. You have to believe that it's going to happen pretty soon to take action. Otherwise, tomorrow, the next day, the next week, I got a lot of other things I'm doing. You have to believe it's close, it's affecting you or something you care about. And you have to believe it's doable. So this has been very effectively exploited by those that don't want action taken. And this is exactly what the tobacco industry did for 50 years. And so people looked at that and said, if the tobacco industry can get away with it, we should try this same thing. Because they didn't want government action. The same thing happens for us now. Climate change is absolutely real. It's happening today. It's going to affect you constantly. People down in Sarasota, they just got 12 inches of rain. My partner driving on 40 just got about 6 inches of rain and all kinds of accidents. And it's doable. This is an important one. We can't stop climate change. None of us can. But we can do things that make a difference. Difference in the world, and as much as anything else, a difference in here. Because part of the problem is this is a scary, big, nasty sucker. And so it's kind of nice just to go over in the corner and do something over here. Engaging is really, really important, and it really can make a difference. This is a huge thing. Again, the industry has pushed so hard against this. Eat to your health, fruits and vegetables. I'm not talking that you have to cut out everything and, become a vegan goddess. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm saying move in the direction. Start. Pay attention to what you're eating. Beef is a huge deal. If beef was a country, its ecological carbon footprint would be second only to the China and the US. So if you eat a pound of beef a week, you're putting in 2.4 tons of carbon dioxide in the environment. That's the totality of what it makes to have a hamburger. So cut back. Eat only 1/4 pounder. I'm not saying you have to become, stop everything, but I am saying pay attention. It's way better for your health. The data is unbelievably powerful now. To eat more fruits, vegetables, nuts, more of a plant-based diet. It's way better for your health. And it even starts at 70-year-olds. It still makes a difference, a significant difference. And it reduces a very significant factor on climate. So I have three people here today. Brad Rouse representing Energy Savers Network and Don Kraus representing Citizens Climate Lobby. Brad, raise your hand. And is Karen here?
No, she's sick.
Oh, well, that's stinks. So third act, because I was looking forward to meeting her. This is something that Bill McKibben started. You know who Bill McKibben is?
Oh.
Bill McKibben's, he's a writer, an environmentalist, very, very influential guy. He started 360.org. So 360.org was an attempt to keep carbon dioxide levels at 360 parts per million or lower. It was a national effort. Without getting into too much of the weeds, based on the ice cores, going back about 1.2 million years now, carbon dioxide in the atmosphere had never been above 300 parts per million. It only touched it once. Most of the time it was about 240, 220, sometimes 260, 200 parts per million. What they've shown from those cores is that when carbon dioxide goes up, temperature goes up. When carbon dioxide goes down, temperature goes down. They have 1 million years worth of data showing this relationship. It's very, very clear. So for the last 1 million years, carbon dioxide had never been above 300 parts per million. As of yesterday, I think it was 420 parts per million. 427 parts per million. Thank you. For 1 million years, it hadn't been above 300. Now we're at 427, and it's just climbing. It's just going up. So 360 was an effort done about 2 decades ago to keep it below 360. That's gone by the wayside. So third act is another effort that he's put together. And it's for people of I think people of over 60. Third act of our life, okay? You know, you have a third and a third and a third. So now I'm in my last third, which is always really hard to recognize, but it's true. And so he's trying to mobilize people at this age group and get them engaged on this issue. Because I'm going to watch climate change happen. If I'm in the wrong place at the wrong time, climate change is going to hit me right in the face. It's going to rain on me. I'm going to hit by a bolt of lightning. I'm going to get caught in a mudslide. I'm going to get, caught in sea level rise or some such thing. If I'm in the wrong place at the wrong time, or my properties, or my kids, or my car. And I'm going to see this immigration thing, and I'm going to have problems, and my heart's going to be torn out by watching how difficult this thing is going to be for people. But ultimately, in the next, I'm optimistic, I'll live 30 years. In the next 30 climate period, the next one climate period, I'll be quote unquote fine.
You mean what?
Fine, quote unquote. I'm not going to, have the problems that a lot of other people have. And so I'm part of that generation that's in that place where we could say, well, gosh, young kids, every generation has a big problem. This is yours. Get to it. But that's not how I go about my life. So that's the idea of third act. So this was another group to try to encourage people to engage. There's a lot of other groups out there that are doing good things. If you're on the more conservative side, Republican-y, and this is a Republican conservative-based group that recognize climate change is a big deal, and they're trying to work on it. Lots of things. Even the Sierra Club's up there. Who knew? So I personally believe this is the most important election in my lifetime. Perhaps the most important election, actually I would say the most important election even above the Civil War time. That was really important for the US, no doubt. This is really important for the world. because Rich's comments notwithstanding, and they're valid, we've got to engage with China. China's doing some really good stuff, but China's also doing some not so good stuff. And China doesn't have respect that the U.S. usually has. We've certainly lost it recently, but we can regain that respect and we can be leaders again on a national, international stage. And so this particular election is absolutely huge. And so it's not just voting. It's working on this, working on your family, you know, your uncle who is a real jerk, getting him not to vote, getting your kids to engage. You know, there's lots of opportunities. And it's really, really important that we engage in sub-level, perhaps more than we've ever done in our life, till November 7th. Yes, that was it. These are some great communicators, because goes out. So these are some people that do a great job of communicating, a lot better than I do. Some names up there. You see McKibben's there. These are what I think are really quality sources of information. So you can doubt everything I have to say, and that's fine. But there's a lot of really good sources of information out there. And I want to give one of my personal heroes the last word. So thank you for your time, and actually, thank you. So please talk to Don, talk to Brad as opportunities to engage.
Here downstairs, what are you?
Downstairs, both. Why don't you stay here because you're here, but you have stuff downstairs, and talk to Judy. There's 3 places to engage here. Try not to go out without engaging. Now you may be overwhelmed and you may be doing great stuff, and there's no judgment here. We're all doing the best we can. It's a difficult time. No judgment here, but try to do something. What's that?
You go back to the slide where you listed all the agencies, like.
Absolutely.
Slides back. That one. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Absolutely. I think you get this or have opportunity to see it. But anyway.
Yeah, this presentation is being recorded, and within the next week, it'll be on our Sierra Club website, wncSierraclub.org. So you can tell your friends to go there and watch it and things like that. And if you've got questions, please wait for the microphone, because we had about 30 people online that would love to hear your questions too, not just the answer. So if you got a question, raise your hand and we'll bring you a microphone.
Huh.
Roger, you did such a great job.
All I hear is,
Here's one.
I'll just take a second as a public service announcement for Energy Savers Network and what we're doing. We're working with the county, and I don't know if you know this, but Buncombe County, another source of hope, is back in 2017 through the work of Judy and Ken and some other folks at Sierra Club. Buncombe County passed a resolution to go to 100% renewable energy by 2042, and to go 100% renewable energy in their facilities by 2030. And City of Asheville passed a similar resolution. And one of the things that happened is that we formed the Blue Horizons Project Community Council, which is a group of citizens who are working on trying to achieve that goal for the community. And it's a volunteer organization. Duke Energy is on the council, so we have some cloud of members, representatives of the city and the county, and then individual citizens. And for those who are really interested, we are looking for new people to come on the council to take a look. So you can go out to bluehorizonsproject.com or org. And they're doing really good work in the city. One of the programs of the Blue Horizons Project is Energy Savers Network, where I'm the co-founder of Energy Savers. We help low-income people save on energy, and we go into people's homes. We've done over 1,000 homes. We do a series of things that help them save on energy. We've got some of our volunteers in the past. Darlene here especially has done a lot of volunteering with Energy Savers, and Jane was one of our very first volunteers. So you can come out and do work days with Energy Savers. You can also volunteer, and it's about 3 or 4 hours. It's a very, very impactful. You are helping the most challenged people in our community, other than the homeless who are, they don't use any energy, but to speak of, but people who have a home who have a high energy burden. And that is like low hanging fruit for the future, and to way to express your love for your community and your planet, to come out and help people and help the planet at the same time. We also need people who maybe aren't so handy, but who can work just to help us get clients is a big issue. Just convincing low-income people in various places to come help us.
Help them.
Yeah, get convinced to help us. So anyway, come see me and I'll sign you up.
And let Don have a chance to talk too.
Sure.
Thanks. I'm Don Kraus. I'm one of the state coordinators for Citizens Climate Lobby in North Carolina. So we know politicians don't create political will, they respond to it. And so, and we know when it comes to climate change, sometimes you always think, oh, the cavalry is going to come and save the day. Well, that's not happening. We are the cavalry. And so what we do is we empower people, individuals across the country, around the world, to be able to work with their politicians, their legislators, their lawmakers, and really create the political will for lowering carbon emissions in the country and really being able to have much more effective policy on climate. We have people across the political spectrum that we don't agree on a lot of stuff, but we agree on a livable world. And we work together and we make it happen. And we get legislation passed on a regular basis. We lobby up in DC. We go up en masse and take over the Hill at least 1 day a year. But we do more meetings with our members. We also now have started lobbying in Raleigh as well, because state policy is important as well. So all the work that you do here locally in your homes, in your houses, in your diet, and all those things, that's really, really important. But we got to actually change the policy. And so we've made good strides, but there's a lot more work to do. So if you're interested in getting involved that way, pulling on the levers of political will, come talk to me.
Thank you both.
Got a question here.
Go ahead, Nina.
Two points, if I may. The first is, my name is Nina Tovish. I have a local nonprofit called Sustain ABL, whose goal is to shift our local economy away from over-reliance on tourism and towards the sustainability sector. This is one of the rare occasions when economic growth and development can be good for everyone. We have a great start in this region in terms of local businesses, local not-for-profits, government, educational institutions, working on sustainability products and services, information, knowledge, science. We really have the great mix here. We need to bring everyone together, raise public awareness about what sustainability sector products and services contribute to our local economy and how growth of this sector would be good for everyone. It's a rare case where rapid economic growth will actually serve our entire community for, I would say at least a century to come, because this problem is not going away anytime soon. However, the question I have is about how we could reduce barriers to the growth of this sector, and particularly around issues of regulation and permitting, because my understanding is there's all kinds of, for example, renewable energy projects that are held up, thousands of megawatts worth of projects that are sitting stymied because the regulations and permitting process is so burdensome.
Thank you, Nina.
Good question, and that's been going around and around for a long time. This isn't new.
Actually, Barrasso.
Yeah.
Legislation that has passed out of
Just
There's new legislation that passed out of the Senate Energy Committee. It's a Manchin Barrasso, so it's bipartisan. It's no one loves it, so it's a compromise, and it's the best permitting bill that we're going to do. It has pieces in it for being able to really rapidly increase decrease the amount of time it takes to get these projects online, build up our grid and make our grid long distance. Right now, Duke won't go out of our state on a grid, and we need to have our grid, an electric grid, bigger than the weather. If we want our renewables to work, it has stuff in it for that. It has stuff for offshore wind. It has a lot of pieces in it. It also has some pieces we don't like in it, but the politics is the art of the possible. And this is really, it's good. This is going to move. So if you're interested in that, we'll be talking to Senator Tillis later this week and his staff about the bill, but get involved, write, call, talk. But that's really the answer to your question on permitting reform. Is that's the best bet we've had so far.
Hey, my name's Todd. One thing I did not see is cap and trade, like carbon exchange, like at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange stuff. Is that no longer considered a viable short-term mitigation strategy?
No, it's there, and this is a lot what Citizens Climate Lobby,
Okay. Okay.
they do. And that was a omission by your imperfect
No,
presenter.
that's fine. I was just curious. Okay.
No,
thank
no,
you very
because it's very important internationally. So yes, that's definitely a very important thing.
I so appreciate you including our food choices, and for people that are new to considering making changes on your food choices, there's tons of support in our community here, including at Ollie. There's a special interest group that's on plant-based, a lot of great talks and recipes and information. There's also if you want to consider going vegan or heading that direction, there's free cooking classes, wonderful classes. There's just so much support and resources.
And
and meetup groups as well.
I'll echo that. My partner Deb is going vegan, and I was going, you got to be kidding me. And yet I'm finding that the food's excellent. Not completely all vegan yet, but I'm really enjoying it. And so we already cut out the beef stuff, but I was still eating a fair amount of chicken and pork and other things. And I'm finding that, there's that whole sector has really advanced a lot, and Ollie does a good job.
Yeah, no, at one point, we got another question back here first. Sorry. Yeah, the other thing was motion. Sierra Club was promoting locally. We were promoting something called Meatless Mondays, asking people to take one day a week and not eat meat as a starting point. So think about that.
Can you give a short answer of what the carbon exchange he was speaking about?
Don probably can do better than I can, because this is what Citizens Climate Lobby does. So been working on for a couple decades.
The broad piece, it's putting a price on pollution. That's the bottom line. In other words, if you want less of something, make it more expensive. That's as simple as that. So, one of the things Citizens Climate Lobby does a lot of work on is carbon fee and dividend. Put a price on carbon at the source. All that money that's collected goes back to American households as dividends. The cap and trade is another way to put a price on carbon. California is doing that very successfully right now. There's a lot of ways to do it, but the bottom line is you don't let polluters get away for free putting all the stuff into the atmosphere. It's a global common. We own it. We put a price on it. And so that's the short answer, and the long answer, we could have a 6-week course on it. Brad,
I'm sure some people probably want to leave. So if you have that opportunity, feel free. And any final questions? I'll stay here.
I do want to say before people leave, if Roger has convinced you how important this election is, and if you would like to sign up to help us, there are more sign-up sheets going around. So please think about it. And there was another question, is that right? But this will
Comment?
be the last one, and then we will thank Roger.
Friend of mine said, you know, well, they had ice age 1,000 years ago or more, and it melted and then whatever. And I just asked her how many vehicles were on the road 1,000 years ago. And she couldn't answer that. And with respect to the fact that Henry Ford didn't have his first factory here until 1914, that's not that long ago. And I just explained we had to stop this fossil fuel burning, go EVs. My other question was, or my fact was, if you're a vegan, make sure you get the important neurological vitamin B12 in your diet.
Yep. But yeah, people, a lot of the climate deniers, they come up with a bunch of, BS that doesn't make any sense. And so part of the reason to throw up that one slide about what has happened in the last 22,000 years, realize that climate change there's natural variation in climate. There always has been, there always will be, as long as the planet exists. And this isn't about the planet. This is about us, ultimately. So this is an overlay on that. This is putting weather on steroids. And that's a challenge because our society has lived when the weather's been in this boundary. This is where it's been. It's varied in that boundary, but we can deal with that. Climate change comes and says, okay, here's the boundary now. It's that much warmer. We now go up here, and this is the rain, and it's that much warmer. Now, people will adjust to an extent, but not very well. And it's happening extremely fast. For people that are 60 years old in this room, if I remember my statistics correctly, 80% of the carbon dioxide that's up in the atmosphere now went up in their lifetime. So this is happening really, really fast right now. This is why we right now have to get engaged to slow this down, because the train is flying down the tracks.
We had one suggestion online that said for all of us to paint our dark roofs and our driveways white and reflect that heat back up. So that came from
Another
one of our
geoengineering
line
thing.
members.
It's not a bad idea. Just how much?
We want to thank Roger very much for coming, very informative. Let me encourage you to come back September 4th to hear about the lithium mine and EV vehicles and labor. So thank you guys, and you might help.
And Don and Brad,
Yeah,
please,
oh,
please,
and Brad and.
thank you for
Yes,
coming, you two
climate
guys.
change, yes, so please, yes.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Don. Thank you, Brad.
Yes, sir.